the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Suite, it's really about empowering mobility within your corporation in a broad variety of ways. We'll go ahead and get started by first just talking about Microsoft's cloud platform. And again, this is really the cloud discussion webinars that we're giving. And this is a lot around Azure. So Microsoft launched Azure several years ago. They started it out really as a platform as a service where you could basically produce programs on top of Azure for web applications. So you could do web applications and internet applications very well. And they really cornered that market in terms of the functionality provided, which was a different take than somebody like Amazon Web Services, who started out as infrastructure as a service. And by infrastructure as a service, I mean in that environment, you start up your own virtual machines, manage those virtual machines, and then Amazon started adding a lot of additional services that now Microsoft's, in a sense, trying to catch up to. They're getting closer and closer. We think the Azure offering is very powerful, and we think it's going to surpass Amazon Web Services in a very short time now. It's a very cost-effective solution and allows for an incredible amount of flexibility. So part of the Azure services is this thing we're going to talk about, the Enterprise Mobility Service. What the Enterprise Mobility Service does is it takes various pieces of the Azure cloud and Microsoft offerings and puts them together in a way to make your mobile applications and mobile devices as secure as possible. So really, mobility has become the new norm. At least 33% of employees now work frequently outside of their office. If you think about this just straight up, your salespeople, if you just look at your company, your salespeople are all on the road most of the time anyway. They all have mobile devices. Some companies allow people to bring their own devices. Others have corporate-owned devices. And it depends a lot on the amount of IT control that the company is willing to release or allow. Microsoft does a lot with the Enterprise Mobility Suite to make sure that your IT department still has a large amount of control no matter what the solution is there, whether that is a bring-your-own device or a corporate-owned device. So the devices don't necessarily need to be domain-joined for them to have some security solutions around the parts of the device that are actually managed by the enterprise. So this is a new way of looking at things. It's a way of managing the software as well as the data on these devices in a way that you can ensure that the corporate data is protected. And again, this is kind of a new way of looking at this. Most companies that are doing these mobile device services are protecting either the applications in a kind of a window or a sandbox, and the data that goes to those applications in that sandbox, which requires obviously some rewriting of a lot of applications and some wrapping of those applications, is separate from the rest of the device. And there's not a lot of flexibility in deciding which documents are to be allowed outside that device and which are in, and Microsoft allows for that flexibility as well. So again, what's driving the change? The change has really happened by these, again, the plethora of devices out in the market. We all have smartphones today. We all have personal computers. We all have corporate portable computers for the most part, and then we have our computers at our office. There's a real infight between IT and the users about which access they want. And the funny thing I've noticed at companies is, though we end users want a lot of access, it tends to be the executives that actually push for the more and more access because they're on the road and they want to have access to everything. And they end up often being the ones that push the policy back on IT to open up the access, which is very worrisome because it brings up problems. And that's one of the reasons we get viruses and people coming into our infrastructure and breaking in and stealing data. So the device, the change, I would say, is often promoted by executives and, of course, users. The number of devices, and then the applications and data people want to discover. And again, there's a tension between IT and users on what should be available and what times and on which devices. So as we went along, one of the things you'll notice is that the changes in the infrastructure really drives the complexity. So we started out with laptop management and desktop management, and that had some problems and some risk, and we were able to manage that pretty well with products like System Center. And the System Center product line, if you don't know it, is in about 66% of the companies today for deploying applications. So it's been around a long time. It's a very versatile product. The next thing that came out really were this plethora of devices, and the devices are managed by MDM solutions, mobile device management solutions. And there are a number of mobile device management solutions out in the market. To name a few are AirWatch, which was purchased by VMware recently, Citrix, ZenMobile. Well, ZenMobile was purchased by Citrix. There's another one called Good Technology, and then, of course, Mobile Iron, and Microsoft's Azure Windows Intune. So Microsoft Windows Intune is what really is Microsoft's answer to mobile device management, and that's part of the Enterprise Mobility Suite as we begin talking. There are also a number of other players. Symantec offers one, Kaspersky offers one. It became the vendors offering endpoint protection, it was almost like a Me Too about a year ago. They all started throwing simple mobile device management into their products. So it's likely if you're buying endpoint protection, you're going to be approached with an offering that's either included or an add-on for mobile device management. So be aware that's happening. Those products aren't bad. Depending on your needs, sometimes those will solve your entire solution. Most of them handle the simple issues of mobile device management, things like ActiveSync for email. Most of them don't handle wrapping the applications or putting them in a protected sandbox. The next piece of risk became SaaS applications, and SaaS means software as a service, and we'll talk about that a lot with cloud. We'll talk about infrastructure as a service, which again is loading up essentially your virtual machines. There's platform as a service, which is essentially running applications, your own applications on somebody else's managed operating system or environment. So platform as a service could be as simple as Microsoft's ability to run a web application or even a message queue or things like that. So it becomes a little bit of an environment like that. And then we roll into software as a service, which are really things like Office 365 or Salesforce, or there are a number of other ones. We run Concur at our corporation, which is an expense report application. All of these products are software as a service. It's actually they're projecting that software as a service applications, that all major applications that your company uses are going to be offered as software as a service within the next probably 6 years. So it's become a very big offering. It's going to be more and more available, and it's going to be more and more of a push for you to utilize it. And that's for a number of reasons. One is the companies can update the software real time. It offers a better service to you. They're able to be more flexible. And honestly, it's also that they have more control. With those software as a service, you're obviously paying monthly. You're not paying for upgrades every once in a while, which we've seen the whole software industry go against. So the other thing to prepare for as a corporation is that you're going to be paying for services on usually a monthly or yearly basis for software as a service. Again, corporations originally sold applications that you had a perpetual license for. You owned them outright. Then they decided they essentially needed a little bit more money from you, so they offered things like software assurance or maintenance. A lot of corporations paid that. Often that maintenance included upgrading to the next version. It was a way to guarantee for the corporation that you would upgrade, so they didn't have to re-promote their new version every time to you. And now they're moving to the software as a service, which is, again, easier in many ways. You don't have to manage it, install it, have your IT folks focused on it, which is great, but again, it changes your cost model. So you're paying for these things as you go, and you don't have any ownership of the product. The next piece with risk is data. So this comes into play with a lot of software as a service applications, and it's a big issue with, with Azure and Office 365. We always have people asking, if it's HIPAA compliant, how secure is my data? And the answer is these guys are very secure. In fact, I would go on record as saying that often these cloud environments are more secure than your own environment. And the reason for that is a lot of reasons. One is that the checks and balances they have in place are beyond anything most corporations can afford in terms of allowing access to data and access to physical machines. And again, once you have access to a physical machine, you have access to everything on it. They are protected with security guards. They're protected with procedures that people have to go through to access the data. It makes it very secure. The problem, of course, is as secure as you make it, one of your employees can always grab that data and put it on a USB drive if you allow USB access, or basically copy it to home or send it themselves in the email and put it on their personal machine. And now you really don't have much control over that. Microsoft had a solution for quite a while called Active Directory Rights Management. And now they're offering that as Azure rights management, and that rights management server is available today on Azure. It's also part of the Enterprise Mobility Suite, and it's going to make managing data much more secure, because with applications supporting it, you can actually mark data as being rights managed, and only people with this very specific permission can look at that data. Also, that data, so they could copy that file and paste it somewhere, but the new person looking at it, or if they're let go and they're taken off the access, when they go to open it, it's encrypted and there's just no access to it. Microsoft's also working on technologies where you as a corporation can say, I don't want that data out there anymore, and when the person goes to open it, it'll detect that it's not supposed to be there, and it will delete it literally from the disk, so there's no possibility of it being there anymore. So again, data anywhere applications was another issue. So what companies came up with, again, over time, Citrix are one of the leaders in this, which is funny in a way because Microsoft offered it very early with remote data services or terminal services. And then Citrix kind of laid on top of that functionality with their easier management of the terminal services. And today you have two types of VDI mainly. There's things like XenApp, which is management of applications running virtually in essentially on a Windows server. I like the XenApp / terminal server approach because it is far more efficient than the VDI approach where you're running an entire desktop. Examples of that are VDI such as VMware View or XenDesktop. And in those cases, again, you're running an entire OS, and you have some of the more management of that OS, and so there's a little bit more complexity there. They've eased it a little bit by pooling, which means every time a user logs on, they essentially get a brand new virtual machine with just their properties copied over and essentially a pointer to their disk. And that makes things a lot more efficient, but still the most efficient and easily updated, I still believe, is the XenApp, and I think that's a way to go for many companies. And then we have, the next big thing, what's going to happen next. So we're not going to answer that today, but it's just something to think about. What are the next stages in this data? What's going to drive the complexity, and how are we going to manage that? So enterprise mobility, really is going to be about protecting your data and enabling your users and the coexistence between those two. We're going to handle that in a number of ways. We're going to handle it via Microsoft Enterprise Mobility via identity management, mobile device and applications management, and by mobile device I also mean regular laptops, and that's an important thing to note. If you look at all the other mobile device management companies out there, I don't believe any of them allow for the management of software on an actual PC. So that's one of the big strengths Microsoft Windows Intune has over a lot of the other mobile device management functionality. And then we have access of information and protection, again, Azure Rights Management. So what do you get when you get the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Suite? Well, essentially, the Microsoft Mobility Enterprise Suite is basically Microsoft Windows Intune. It's Azure Active Directory Premium, which offers a lot of functionality, and it's Azure Rights Management Server. And we're going to talk about each of those in detail. One of the things I like to point out is because we're a licensing company, I like to talk out a little bit about what's offered in terms of CALs. A lot of you are familiar with Windows Server CALs and CALs for rights management or CALs for Exchange and again, what a CAL is, it's either a user or a device. It gives the user or device the ability to utilize the server software. Again, another magical thing corporations came up with to charge more to companies that utilize the server software more. So with the rights with this mobility suite, you get essentially a Windows Server CAL, a Forefront Identity Manager CAL, a System Center Configuration Manager CAL, and the Rights Management Server on-premise CAL rights. I wouldn't really call it a Rights Management Server CAL because Microsoft doesn't call it that, but essentially you get the rights to that. And the important thing is that those rights both are in the cloud and on your corporation, and that's a major difference between the rights management you get with just Office 365 and what you get with the Azure Rights Management. So we're going to talk about these three things. Well, one is identity first. We're going to talk about this thing called hybrid identity. Identity is a very, very important part of security, and we're going to get that next. Then we're going to talk again about mobile device and then access to information. So what's important about identity? So one of the issues we've always had is that people have passwords for every different thing on their PC and every different website, and that is a problem, and that's in particularly a problem for enterprises. And the problem with that is that it's very hard to maintain. First of all, you give people the usernames and passwords when they start, and they have to reset them. You encourage them to have a different username and password. So, of course, they're storing those passwords somewhere, usually in an unprotected file or an Excel spreadsheet on their system or at home, or, God forbid it's printed out and put on their desktop. But anyway, it's available. So one of the issues is that those are available, and also that when somebody's let go or you've changed their access, you don't easily have a way of going out and turning off their access to all these applications, because a lot of people, they have onboarding processes, but their offboarding processes are just nowhere near as efficient. So they're not able to go out and run procedures to turn off these third-party apps. So often, when companies let go of an employee or an employee quits, they have access to these remote services for months. So, I left one company and I still had access to my MSDN for about half a year, which I was happy with. I thought it was really awesome, but, they realistically, they could have used that license on someone else, and it probably would have been more efficient for them. So one of the solutions that came up was this idea of single sign-on. Now, there are a lot of companies to watch for in the single sign-on arena. So Microsoft's one with Azure Active Directory Premium. That service is very nice. There's a free component of it, and the free component of it offers quite a variety of services just on its own. So the free component of Azure AD offers this essentially a directory as a service, user and group management, access to single sign-on of up to 10 apps per user. So you can get this ability to single sign-on, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, for free already, and even a self-service password change with a free service. You get additional features though when you actually sign up for the Enterprise Mobility Suite or the Premium, such as the ability to do that management better and to offer something called single sign-on with your users. One of the key difference between identity management capabilities is one of the things we'll hear a lot about is something called same sign-on, sometimes called simple sign-on, and that's differentiated from something called single sign-on. What all these things do, and I'll list some of them. Okta is one, Centrify is another, Ping Identity is a third, and then there's OneLogon, and again, Microsoft Azure Active Directory. These all allow for you to essentially, in some way, synchronize your Active Directory or create the essential usernames and passwords in their service, and then associate those passwords to the third-party SaaS applications you're using. For instance, Salesforce, Microsoft Office 365, Concur, you can think of a lot of them your company's probably using today. ADP is another good example. So all those services, they've kind of gotten wise and they support something called SAML 2.0. SAML 2.0 is an interface that allows them to work with these identity management companies in an easy way. So when a new SaaS offering comes up and it supports SAML, it's very easy for somebody within Azure Active Directory, whether Microsoft has adopted the application or you need to wrap it, it's fairly easy to wrap it and produce single sign-on that way. Also, these companies usually support literally thousands of applications out the door. So if they don't handle your specific application, it's more of a rarity than it's more of an exception than the rule. So you'll have that. So single sign-on is key because, once again, you've got it synchronized to your Active Directory. You turn them off, all those SaaS applications turn off immediately. So you've got a very easy onboarding and exiting for that user. Now I want to get back to same sign-on versus single sign-on. Same sign-on says I'm going to put my usernames and passwords up in the cloud or replicate them up in the cloud, and the users have the same password. And what that usually means is they have to enter their username and password more often because they're not just logging on once to their system. Single sign-on is a way where the users are authenticated against your Active Directory, and it knows they've been authenticated, and a token is stored up in the cloud. And when they go to these new services, when the services try to log on, it can access the token. It knows they've logged on very recently and will give them access to the service. So again, this identity management idea is we've got lots and lots of SaaS applications in the cloud, millions of passwords. Okay, maybe not, well, maybe millions with everybody, but a few dozen per user up to. We have this user identities. We get new applications that has a new username and password. What we want instead is a user identity that's unique, and we show these like as a fingerprint because it's really an identity now. It's an identity associated with the username and password. And the user, when they enter something with this, they get some policy controls. So you, as a IT manager, have a couple of things. First of all, you're able to handle this unique identity between the SaaS applications, and you're also able to control policies on devices. So when the user comes up with a new device, one of the features offered, especially with Azure Active Directory Premium, is two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is really, really wonderful because it says when I go to log on with a new device to the service, I can log on, but I'm actually then checked with the two-factor authentication. Microsoft purchased Phone Factor, and PhoneFactor basically will either send out an ID to the end user to check against, or they have a customized application that has unique IDs being created as they go, and that the unique IDs are customary to them. So that a trusted device is required in some way to add a new device to the service. And the other piece that Microsoft offers, which is also part of the premium and not part of the common, is the ability to produce extensive reports. So one thing you can do is you can look at and see whether a specific user is accessing the environment from other countries or somewhere else when you damn well they're not in those other countries potentially. So you need to be able to be aware if somebody's sharing a password or just aware of where your attacks are coming from. So you're able to get these data information and see what's happening with the environment. The other piece that's there is self-service password reset. A self-service password reset is obviously a great time saver for you. I've heard that a ton of IT usage is resetting passwords. We run that to my own company all the time. Going to a website and resetting them is an awesome addition, and it's something I would love at my own company. So if any of our IT people are listening. So essentially, the identity management Microsoft offers gives you great end user experience. It's easy, one password. It's unified against all of the SaaS applications out there. It's controlled by your Active Directory and your access. You decide what kinds of passwords, how they're entered, and what types of access they have. So the control really comes back to IT. And then there's a great amount of reporting associated with it. So kind of a comparison here is the free service obviously has some security reports. The advanced reporting you can see is in the premium service, as well as things like company branding, usage, and better service level agreement. You don't get the service level agreement, obviously, with the free service. You also get the Forefront Identity Manager CAL and the FIM, which is the ability to utilize Forefront Identity Manager in your environment. Forefront Identity Manager becomes important when you actually have multiple forests within your environment, and you need to use that with a single sign-on service. Azure multi-factor authentication is, again, there's a difference between what's offered for Office 365 and what's in Azure multi-factor authentication. So when you sign up, even if you have Office 365, it's often good to get the extended Windows Azure Active Directory Premium because of this multi-factor authentication. It gives you things like fraud alerts, much better security reports, lets you block and unblock users, a lot of other features like that. And you can read about all these. There are these things called service description documents, and they're on Microsoft's tech site. So if you ever have a question about anything that's cloud related, one of the really wonderful things is these service description documents are updated almost real time. So if you have any questions, how much data can I have up there? How many users can I have? You can you can just Google service description doc and then the service and then site. I like to specify the site technet.microsoft.com. It'll bring you right up to the service description document, and you're able to find what you're looking for very rapidly. That is a big part of my job, actually, because these services change so often, and they're always updating and adding features. I've never seen them change to offer anything less. That's one good thing. As these prices are there, you do keep getting more and more for your money. So the next thing we're going to talk about is mobile device and application management. And that is done with Microsoft Windows Intune. Microsoft Windows Intune has been a growing product for a while. It's very well integrated now with System Center Configuration Manager. And the wonderful thing about that is essentially you still have, if you're one of those 66% of the companies that uses System Center, you still have a one point of access to manage your devices both within your corporation and outside the corporation. And the other big piece about Microsoft's mobile device application is that you're able to, somehow I've lost connectivity. I'm hoping my screen's still showing. One of the things you're able to do is to, is to manage not just devices that are domain joined, but PCs that are not domain joined. So we have a lot of different capabilities there. Hang on one second. Great, so the screen's still showing. I'm going to go to the next page. We'll see if we've got this going. Hopefully you can still see that change. So again, one of the big features of Microsoft's mobile device management solution is that it manages PCs as well as devices like phones and iPads and other devices. It also manages all the devices you can imagine, right? So one of the things out there in the market is the other mobile device management companies, some of which are we've talked about before, but which are things like AirWatch and Zen Mobile and BlackBerry and Mobileye, and a lot of them have chosen to support the Windows Phone last. No surprise there probably, but Microsoft supports the Windows Phone, but they also support the iOS and Android and the other major players out in the market, including the BlackBerry. So Microsoft has support for all these mobile devices, and all of them. They allow support not just for simple management, but they also provide a Windows Intune wrapper. And what that wrapper does is it allows you to wrap your corporate applications so that those corporate applications are then secure and managed by your IT department. So we look at these applications and companies. They come in. They basically enroll in your company's portal. You're able to set restrictions or needs for them. I know my corporation's finally gotten around to it, and they're making me put a password on my device, which I've had anyway. But one of the things they're requiring now is passwords for devices, and that's a big step for some companies. The other thing that happened with these devices is you would have an intermingling of applications. So though you had corporate data on the applications as well as personal data, when the person came to quit the company, it was very hard to know what you could or couldn't wipe. So though the ability is often there to wipe the entire device, if that device is owned by the end user, you're actually very liable for a lawsuit, even if you've had them sign things away because people don't read what they're signing. So it's something to be aware of. So what companies started doing is they started creating wrappers. So there are some applications that are managed and some that aren't. Twitter showing there is a mistake. Twitter is not a managed application by anyone that I know of. But in this case, all the Microsoft applications are managed. Facebook's not one either. So what they've done is they've allowed Microsoft applications come by default as managed applications. So you're able to have those installed and available to users while they're part of the corporation and have that access go away when they're not. And that includes things like Microsoft's OneDrive for Business. So OneDrive for Business essentially can isolate applications from a user's phone. So you've got the ability to kind of block the movement of those, not just the applications, but the data that applications access from one environment to another. Again, we have things like the ability to, when you have a managed application, you can copy between the applications, but you can't copy and paste between a personal application. So if the person tried to copy the file from their Word and paste it into even their own personal OneDrive, a lot of people have that, they have their own and then they're corporate, they're not able to do that either. So it's a protection not just of the applications, but of the data. And that's a very important thing, which also means that your corporation has control of that data and can delete it when needed or pull it back. There's a very interesting story that happened at Microsoft years ago, which was the mails were being sent out by corporate vice presidents. When one of those mails would go out, it was starting to get released to the press almost immediately. out came a very common mail that said that, basically the person would be personally fired by one of the vice presidents of the company if that ever happened again. And shortly after that, Rights Management Server was being utilized internally. So the corporation now has the ability to wipe just the corporate information from those devices, and they don't suffer any potential lawsuits or problems with the application. The user's given them access, they have controlled access, and the controlled ability to manage that device. So one of the great things about Microsoft Mobile Device Management, again, is it's consistent, it's secure across both corporate applications and data. You're able to wrap your own corporate applications so that they are Windows Intune compatible and can exist in that managed space. There's a simple management console within Windows Intune for all your devices you can handle. And again, I like to point out that it also manages your PCs. So those bring your own device PCs are also manageable via Windows Intune, whether or not they're domain joined. So domain joined devices are really easy to manage with Configuration Manager. So those aren't usually an issue. But now that we've got the mobile devices and the bring your own device, that became an issue which Microsoft Windows Intune solved. The next piece we're going to talk about is just access to data. And again, this is Microsoft's rights management solution. And I've talked about it a little bit already. So we'll go through it again. Oh, we have a couple of questions out there. I'm going to go ahead and answer them. The first question is for Enterprise Mobility Suite, and specifically Azure Active Directory Premium. Is there any concept of an external user? And do external users need to be licensed? So the answer to that is well, it would require, my understanding is it would require you to have essentially two tenants to do kind of an external user. So you could do a free Azure Active Directory and have those external users there, and then have essentially your internal users with its own tenant that has become Azure Active Directory Premium. I don't know of a way to actually separate those two different types of internal or external users within a one tenant. Now, of course, if the question really means give access to specific applications or services, you can do that, but again, those users would need to have a license. The next question is, will Intune Enterprise Mobility allow you to bring your own mobile devices to be considered in-network? You can do that in a way. The in-network solution mobile devices are really managed via Windows Intune. It's not necessarily in-network. You still have a couple options there. You'd have to use some type of VPN to get those in-network, which would be a third-party product you're installing via Windows Intune to allow the in-network access. The other option that I really encourage people to use for mobile devices, especially corporate-owned devices, is to really support Microsoft's Enterprise, Windows Enterprise. And Microsoft's Windows Enterprise comes with a feature called Direct Access. And Direct Access, if you're not using it, it will make you the hero of your entire corporation. Direct Access means that once it's installed on the PC, that PC actually comes and connects to your Active Directory over a hidden VPN immediately when the machine boots up. So once the machine boots up and has network access, your Configuration Manager now has access to that PC. You can start pushing updates, you can deny access, allow access, and have full control of that PC at that time. And they are essentially on the corporate net, with the ability to also do things outside the corporate net. And so it really means they log in once to their PC, they get authenticated with Active Directory through this Direct Access, and then they have full corporate access. So that's really the solution that I consider is best for a device that is corporate owned or corporate controlled. The next level is really with a mobile device is something like Windows Intune, which again you'd have to use some other capability to connect via VPN environment. So access and information protection, what we talked about with rights management, this is that ability now for the corporation to lock down data. So they can lock down data and they lock down access to it. But again, somebody grabs that data and that data can be copied off a device and stolen. What you want is you want that data itself to be locked down so it can be copied for access and maybe only given different rights to access, such as read-only or the ability to edit. Sometimes you don't want people to print it. So again, if they have that access, you can limit a lot of things. You can limit their ability to copy it from one device to another, allow it for only one device, and you can limit personal access to that data. So with rights management, Azure Rights Management Service, it hooks into Windows Rights Management Server. You can also integrate it with SharePoint and Microsoft Exchange, which is a feature above what's offered with the free rights management or the rights management associated with Windows Office 365. It allows for you to utilize it internally on your Windows Server files as well, and it more securely share documents between colleagues and businesses. So again, this is an encryption at the document level, not at the ability of the application to control what's moved between, applications on a device or anything else. The data itself is protected. And the servers for that exist obviously in the cloud and on the device. And because the data is encrypted, it doesn't matter what device they're on. They can only utilize it if that encrypted data has access in the right way. So the person has to be logged on and authenticated, be the right person, and be on the right type of device to access it. Microsoft allows one really cool thing called Bring Your Own Key to all the Azure rights management services. And the Bring Your Own Key really means that Microsoft can't give out your key. They can't hand your key over to anyone, and the thing there is giving your key to the government. They're not supposed to be able to do that if you have your own key. So the data is encrypted, and hopefully somebody would have to come to you with a subpoena to get the key and access to it. And Microsoft also can't recover your key, so it's gone. Microsoft still, however, can utilize your key to decrypt the data or the content so people can utilize it, especially via the online applications. And they have the ability to replicate that key within their data center so they can utilize it again to decrypt things in the right locations. So the last capability, and it's kind of sold as part of Azure Enterprise Mobility Suite, but what's interesting is it doesn't offer the CAL or the capability. It's just considered as part of what's required for really protection of your data. So if you want to use this piece for your, essentially $4 per user per month, sadly that does not come with either a VDI or an RDS license. You still have to purchase those separately. But the capability really is about VDI, and that's desktop virtualization. Desktop virtualization offers a very rich experience for the end user of either access to single applications via XenApp or terminal server essentially, or access to an entire desktop via Microsoft VDI solution, which is just as powerful essentially as Citrix or VMware's. So it's worth looking at all of them. There's a lot of argument about whose VDI solutions are the easiest to manage, and for years people said Citrix was the easiest to manage, and VMware's come out with another solution that's pretty easy to manage. But Microsoft's right behind there, and if you think about it, if you're using Microsoft solution, you end up paying for that anyway, whether or not you're using VMware or Citrix. So using Citrix or VMware is a cost on top of what Microsoft's offering with their VDI or other CALs that you're required to use because you're using the Windows OS or Windows servers. So if you can use Microsoft, it's the best way to save money. Some capabilities, desktop virtualization. People don't save. You can turn off all these abilities. They can make it so they can't save their data locally. Their data is stored at a corporate location. You can even make it so they can't copy and paste from the window within which these applications are running. And often these applications don't even look like they're running in a window. They just look like the application running on its own from the desktop. But they are, in fact, running as a virtualized application, and they have all of your protection you want to list around along it. The other reason to use something like this desktop virtualization is if the applications aren't compatible maybe on the devices out there. So obviously a lot of your corporate apps are written so they work on a Windows computer or a Mac computer, but they don't run on the iOS or the Android. Well, there are connectors for all those devices, and those devices allow the connection. Essentially what you're viewing, you're viewing the application through the transmission of the screens and the sound back and forth. The application is really running in that remote location, so no data gets passed back and forth, only essentially image information, and that image information cannot be copied. People can always take photographs. Somebody always points that out, but that's kind of the difference. So again, you have desktop virtualization. You have lots of capabilities there. You can make it session-based. You can have different types of desktops. We'll go through it again really quick. There's the ability to have, again, application, remote access to applications, which I think of as terminal server. Terminal server is one operating system with multiple users using it at the same time. So the difference there is that each of those applications has to support different users utilizing it at the same time. A lot of applications didn't support that originally, but almost every application supports that now. So that's essentially what we think of as XenApp. The next level of applications is virtual desktop VDI, which is when you actually put the entire desktop in a virtualized environment and utilize that and have the applications installed on it for your end users to utilize. You can have a personal virtual desktop, and a personal virtual desktop means that the end user can have control of adding their own applications and handling that. That's a good thing. They're virtualized, they're secure. The bad part of a personalized virtualized desktop is that a lot of your management that you wanted to get rid of is still there. If you have 1,000 personal virtual desktops out there because everybody wants control of their entire machine, when you get a update from Microsoft, you literally have to spin up every one of those applications and update it individually and change apps individually and do bug fixes individually. So a lot of the work's there. So what people have moved to now, for the most part, are what's called pooled virtual desktops. And in that case, what you do is you have one image, a golden image. It spins up several copies of the desktop in the background and keeps them available. When a person logs in, it merges their personal identifiable information with that operating system that's running in the background. So that operating system is always very clean. It runs, spanking new like your new Windows did when you bought it. And the only difference is you can't install applications and make major changes like that. But you do have your own disk space file, and you do have your own desktop background or whatever else your company allows you to have. So those are really the features of VDI. And then there's also Azure Remote App, which is something to consider. I really like it because in that case, the application, you're not even managing it locally. It's just up in the cloud. So you put these things up in the cloud with Azure Remote App. Essentially, it's a Windows terminal server, and the application runs in the cloud. So we got a couple more questions. Is Microsoft planning to deploy a cloud VDI solution? And the answer there is right now they have Azure Remote App, which is essentially a terminal server in the cloud, and that's available today. They haven't announced anything recently that I'm aware of. There may be something that's been, they do this stuff very quickly in the background, but I haven't heard about them releasing a complete desktop VDI solution yet. However, they made changes to their licensing recently, which finally allows you to utilize a virtualized desktop in a cloud environment. So if it's not being offered today and I'm just not aware of it, I have a feeling it's going to come in the near future. Will Intune and Enterprise Mobility Management allow bring your own mobile devices to be considered in network? I already answered that one. So those are the two we had out there. All right. Back to the last couple of slides we have here today. Again, desktop virtualization allows you to have that complete control of the data. There are applications for all of the devices that you can connect to Microsoft's virtualization, just like you can do the same thing with Citrix or VMware. So everybody has their own local program that actually executes against those back-end systems, and they all have their pluses and minuses. Again, with Microsoft, once you pay for that, you pretty much have access, and you're not paying extra for a management application on top of it. So Microsoft, in all these ways, is really empowering enterprise mobility, and this is the way that they've chosen to do this, is by merging these applications together. Right now, it's a little bit of, they've bundled them together for sale in a very economical way, so you have access to a lot of different ones. The way Microsoft's done this in the past is they usually bundle things together like this at first in terms of multiple offerings, and then over the next few versions, it actually starts to bundle together smoother and smoother in terms of the management. So plan on seeing this just evolve and get better and better. It's a necessary place for Microsoft to compete, especially with Citrix and VMware having their own solutions and every other security vendor having their solution. So I think you're just going to see this get more and more powerful. It allows for a very, very powerful solution in the cloud, and Microsoft has a lot of large enterprises using this today. So again, I just one more time wanted to mention that the major difference between the Office 365 rights management and the Azure rights management was that ability to utilize it on site in your corporation. So with that, I'm just open for questions and answers for the next 5 minutes or so. If anybody has any more questions, please type them in. If not, I really, really appreciate you coming today and listening, and I'd appreciate any feedback on this presentation. We love your feedback, and if you have specific questions or I didn't go into enough detail, what I'd love you to do is contact your SoftwareOne representative, and we can schedule a call to go over those in person. Yes, the slides will be available after the talk. Matt will make those available to everybody that attended. Next question, you've talked a lot about the advantage of selecting Intune over other solutions if you're starting with mobility, but if I have already a significant investment in other tools, i.e. AirWatch, how is this attractive for me when it involves an added investment? Well, the fact is, if you've invested in something like AirWatch already, you've invested in pretty much a third of the solution. So in that point, you really have to consider the cost against the other pieces added. And the other great part about Azure is that you're able to buy things in pieces. Same with Office 365, and that's one thing I really like about Microsoft's ability is they're not forcing everything on you. You can buy it in pieces. So if you don't want to use Windows Intune and you like some of the other features like Rights Management Server or the Active Directory and single sign-on pieces, those are available individually. Are there a list of supported apps for single sign-on? Yes, there are. That's a great place to go look is on Microsoft's website. I can try and look that up after the talk, Joseph, if you'll send in your email, send it to Matt Schiffler, and we'll give it back to you. But it's pretty easy to find if you go up to the Azure website and look at Azure Active Directory Premium supported apps. There's a document with a few thousand applications in it. So it's definitely available, and it's fairly easy to find online. All right, with that, I think I've answered everything. I really appreciate you spending time today and being part of the talk. We look forward to having you at our next talk. And I also would like to point out that we have a new thing called Tech Talk, which is an online radio program which allows you to call in real time and communicate with myself and Ben Marshall, who produce this. And we provide a good 3-hour time session. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. You can call in any time with questions on that day's topic or really random questions. We always have a guest speaker that highlights in some specialty, and it tends to be a really fun 3 hours. Again, for us, it's fun 3 hours. For you, it might just be a fun 10 minutes, but we'd love you to tune in and interact with that any way you can, and you'll be seeing information about that coming out. Thanks again, and you have a great day.